Hey guys, in this part of the tutorial we're going to look at setting up your character's files so that they can run in Mugen. To do that I've actually made things a lot easier and I've provided a character template for you. The link's in the video description. This should get the ball rolling and speed up the creation process. All you need to do is download the template, extract it into its own folder, which I've done there. If you open it up you'll just see a number of files. Now you can name each file whatever you like, but I've just kept things basic. I mean, you can rename them to whatever you need to. If you just find this file, which is the def file, that's your character's definitions file, open it up with Notepad. Basically the definitions file contains all the information about your character and what files it contains, like the names of the files, and then Mugen obviously checks your folder for those files and then opens them up. I'll just go through it a little bit with you, but I've pretty much commented throughout the file just to explain a little bit more. So we've got basic things like name. The display name also is the name of your character, but this is the name that will show up in Mugen as well. It's best to keep these two the same just to avoid any issues. Version date would be the date that you have started making the character. The Mugen version. This template is actually for the latest version of Mugen, which is 1.0. The author obviously is your name. Palette defaults, this is the default order of your palette. So basically here you see 1, 2, 3, 4. Player 1 will have palette 1 and player 2 will show palette 2. Now if you want player 1 to have palette 4, then you'd obviously swap the 4 with the 1 and so on with player 2. Also, if you just notice down here, these are the file names that you have in your character's folder. If you need to rename any, you can do that here, as long as it has the extension and that doesn't get changed, then you'll be fine. Just make sure to change it in the character folder as well. One thing I haven't included in the template is a palette. That's because obviously your character will have their own palette, but to add your actual palette that you made in the previous tutorial, I'll show you how to do that now. If you notice, I've commented out PAL1, which is the name, the line for what your palette name is going to be. So if you just delete the semicolon, make note of what you called your palette in the previous tutorial. I just called mine's down here, I called mine 1.act. So if you type 1.act and then save that, close the definitions file and drop your palette into the template folder. Now your characters, it will load the actual palette up with your character, so there won't be no issues. If you open up Fighter Factory 3, again the link's in the video description, go to Project Open, and then you want to open the template folder. You want to open the definitions file. You notice now it's loaded up the exact same file that we was just going through. There's other things that I didn't mention, which is the palette key map. So by pressing X, which is light punch, you'll get palette 1. Pressing hard punch, you get palette 3, and so on. The arcade part at the bottom is like Kung Fu Man. If you want an intro storyboard or an ending storyboard to arcade mode, then you'd obviously set the files up and the animations up for that. But I personally haven't done one of those before, so if I learn how to, I'll do a tutorial on that, but I'm sure that you can find some out there. Anyway, the interface of Fighter Factory 3 is a little bit different to Classic. Pretty much the icons are the same and do the same thing. I just think it's better overall, and you can open multiple characters at once, whereas in Fighter Factory Classic you can't. So it's good for like a huge workload if you have it. Anyway, what we're going to do now in this part of the tutorial is add our character sprites, and we basically want to see them work in Mugen. So you'll need to click this icon, which is the sprites icon. You'll notice 65 sprites already in there, but a lot of them are blank, and that's for a good reason. The first sprite is, it says group 9000 index 0, so the sprite number is 0, but the group number is 9000, and any sprite with a group number of 9000 is usually a portrait. Now this one in particular, sprite 0 of group 9000, is the character's small portrait, so this is what shows up in the character's life bars. So obviously you can add your own to if you already have a small portrait that you want to add. If you just click this button here, which says load a new image from for the sprite from a file, you just find the portrait image that you want and click OK, and it will add that in. But you need to make sure it's aligned exactly how this one is, which has a X and Y axis of 0, which is right in the corner of the cross on the top left hand side, and that should show up fine for default Mugen anyway. The next sprite has a sprite number of 1 in the same group, and that's always your large portrait. Again, it's exactly the same process if you want to change the sprite. Because the group number and the index number already exists, there's no need to delete that and then re-add it. You just hit that button, which is basically changes this to whatever you want to load. The next group actually is the group 5000s, and these are actually all the required group numbers that your character needs to display get hit animations. And basically, if your character throws another character, or say, let's use Kung Fu Man as an example. When Kung Fu Man throws you, he puts you into a custom state where all of these required sprites in the group 5000s are used, because they're universal to every character. So as long as every character has those sprites, which they should, then they will display on the screen properly. If you go into, I'll just quickly go into a Mugen folder. If you go into the documents folder, scroll down, you'll see a PNG file called SPR, and you'll also see a HTML document. If you just open the image file, you'll see all of those groups that I've just shown you, and where to position Kung Fu Man for each of those. So you'll notice here, group 5000 index 0, you'll notice that's the number here. You'll notice it's positioned where it should be, the axis point where the character stands. But then you'll notice when you see group 5000 of index 0, you'll see that it's positioned, it is waist. So what you need to do is you'll need to add the same sprite in again and position the axis point at Kung Fu Man's waist. For 5002, obviously you'll see it's positioned at his head. So what you need to do is go through this file when adding the get hit animations and make sure the character is positioned at these 3 points for all of the group numbers. So it's like get hit light, get hit medium, get hit hard. Make sure all your sprites are positioned at those points for all the required sprites. If you have any problems, just go through Kung Fu Man's file as a guide, and you shouldn't have any issues with that. Right, what we're going to do now is add our character sprites in. What you want to do is add them after your portraits. So if you go to the large portrait there, you want to click this button, which is add a new sprite. If you're using a sprite pack where all the sprites are ripped with like perfect alignment or axis, what you want to do is load up just one first to get the coordinates, then add the rest at those coordinates, and then you won't need to bother aligning all the sprites. So if you double click one of them, this will apply if you're like using a sprite sheet or something. I'll still show you how to align it and everything. Once you open your image, you'll notice group and index again. You want to keep the first sprite that you load from your character as group 0, index 0. So if you leave everything the same on this and just hit OK, you'll notice your character's sprite would have been added in. What you want to do first is position your character. There is a guideline tool. If you press view and check guidelines, gives you a little bit better of a idea where to position your character. I'm just going to position mine, say there. The middle of the cross or the axis is actually Mugen's floor level, so it is a good idea to use the guidelines just to get it a little bit more accurate. You'll notice the x-axis and the y-axis now have coordinates. So mine says 368 291. So what I want to do now is add the rest of my stand-in sprites in at those coordinates, and then I won't have to align the rest of the sprites. So the same process. But obviously we wouldn't just hit OK now, because we've already got group 0, index 0 for our first sprite. So we just need to give it an index of 1, because all our standing sprites will be in group 0. So it adds on from the next number. So index of 1, hit OK, and there we've added all of our sprites in at the same axis point, so we don't have to align. What you might want to do though is crop those sprites that you've added if they have a large background. Oh yeah, if you just see how many sprites are in your group, so I have 6. So if I hit the scissors button and hit group, I want to start at 0 and end on 6, because there's 6 sprites, 7 rather. There you go, it's cropped all of my sprites. Now what you want to do is make the animation for the stance to show in Mugen. So if you hit the animations tab here, you'll notice that there's again quite a lot of animations, as there was with sprites, and these are all the required stuff for Mugen, like stand in, turn in, crouch in, walk in, jump in, etc. And all your get hit animations are in the 5000s again. Just make sure you never change those numbers, but you can change anything else, like for example if you're making a light punch, you can make that 500 if you like, because it's not being used and it's not a requirement. So what we want to do is make our animation. If you turn the guidelines off, again view, uncheck guidelines, on this right hand side you'll see there's a list of all the sprites you have in your sprite file. So obviously we're already highlighted our stance sprites. If you want to add a frame from these bunch of sprites, you just click on the sprite you want to add and hit the add selected to the current animation button. Or if you want to add all of the sprites, you just click anywhere and hit this button, which adds all of the sprites to the current animation. That's exactly what we want to do, so we'll hit that button. Now you'll notice I've because of the template, the way it's set out, there's a duplicate animation frame there. Just delete the first frame, and there you go, we have 7 stance sprites. Actually 6, because of the way my character's stance animation is. So I'm just going to make sure my stand-in animation's a little bit smoother. So I'm going to add a few more frames in, but obviously you can do that to your character to make it look better. Just going to make sure his stance right. There you go. Also, you want to give each of these, this is the frame bar, so for each frame you want to give it a specific frame time before it plays the next frame. The higher the number you put in this little time box here, the slower the animation frame will play. So I'm just going to set mine to a set value for all the frames. I'm not really worried about accuracy right now. So I'm going to give mine a frame time of 6. 1 would obviously be the fastest you can do. Now I want to apply it on all of my frames, so a quick way of doing this is when I've typed in 6 for the first frame, if I hit this button it applies it to the next frames. So now every frame will have a frame time of 6. I'll just explain as well about the frame times. 6 means 6 game ticks. Now for every real-time second it's 60 game ticks, so that might be something that you want to note down. That can come in handy for when a move ends or something like that. But yeah, this is going to be 6 game ticks per frame, which should play out pretty smooth. Maybe a little bit fast, but it doesn't matter. Now each animation should have what we call a collision box or a hitbox, so that it enables your character to be to receive hits and damage. If you notice at the bottom it says CLSN, these are collision boxes. You'll notice blue and red. The red hitbox is your attacking box, so that's where your character, if he has a light punch or something, you'll apply a red hitbox over his hand, which is the damaging hitbox. The blue one is where your character can be hit. So what we're going to do is draw collision boxes over the player where he can be hit, because it's his standing animation. So if you click the button in, and what this is, it draws squares for your hitboxes. So we're going to draw say a square over the head of your character and then the rest over his body. Don't make it too big like that, because if the opponent's here and they make contact with just this part of the box, your character will be hit and it become pretty unrealistic and annoying. So if you want to adjust the size of your box, uncheck the collision box again, click on it, and then drag it to the size that you require. Again, to do this on all frames, there's two ways actually. You can click the box that you want to apply to all of the frames and hit this button down here, which changes it to a persistent hitbox, which applies on all frames like that. And obviously you'll do that for the head. Or if you change those back again, hit this button up here, which is a text editor, you'll see collision 2, which is the blue collision box, and it says there's 2 of them, and then it will show what coordinates each box is at. If you just after the 2 hit type default and then hit apply, it will apply them over all of the frames. So that's another way of doing it. Now that you've added your standing animation, you can either go ahead and add the rest of your sprites. Obviously the longest process is adding your get hit sprites. Also, when adding your sprites, make sure you keep the group numbers similar to the animation number. So next, if you want to add your character's turning sprites when he's standing, click add new sprites again, and make sure the group number's 5. You don't have to do that, but it just keeps things in order, and it's easier to find it on this side if you're searching for it. So we're going to see what our character looks like now in Mugen, how our standing sprites look. You want to hit the tools button up here, button that says add. This will basically add your Mugen executable file. So just give it a name, just so you can recognize it. Hit this button here, which searches for the exe file. Just load that up, hit OK, hit apply, and then this button it runs the project in Mugen. So this is the button that will show you what your character looks like. So hit that, find the name of what you called it on this part, hit OK.
Round 1, fight!
And there you go, you have your character successfully loaded up in Mugen. In the next part of the tutorial, we'll go over the basics of coding, which shows the format of Mugen coding, and we'll also look to program our first basic attack, assuming that you've added all the sprites and the animations in. Thanks for watching. If you have any feedback on how I can improve my tutorials, then please send me a comment and I'll take notes. Cheers.